Okay.
So 5 years later, I had known my husband a while. He lived where I used to live with my ex-husband, and we had dogs, and we went on dog walking. And it was a friendship with the wife, and I lost touch a bit, with all friendships once I decided to move back home. But Steve, my husband, now husband, made contact with me, I would guess probably about a year after, and said that his own marriage was failing, that he discovered his wife had had an affair. He wasn't in faith, but shortly before my marriage ending, Steve had made inquiries with both of us about faith, because we were speaking of it, I was speaking of it with dog walks when they came for meals. So they were friends, but we'd lost touch, and I felt sad about that, because he'd shown interest in wanting to attend an inquiry group, but that all ended for him. But anyway, subsequently made contact with me, asked how I was doing, and so a friendship picked up from there, and it actually, his way into me was because he wanted to explore faith again. And I thought that was interesting. He didn't know where to go, and he'd lost touch with my ex-husband anyway, and wouldn't have carried on being friends with him. So we met up and started to talk about, faith, and I told him I wasn't attending anything. And so anyway, we subsequently had a courtship, but initially it was about exploring faith, and then we found that, there was an attraction there, in a journeying, I guess, through our own hurts. So our paths crossed there. He had his own home, I lived with my parents. We decided to marry 2 years after that, I think, something like that. And he was adamant he would never attend church, even though he considered himself open to... He wouldn't call himself a Christian at that time, but was really questioning and was doing some own research, if you like, about faith, and would ask me, and I said, I think I have a limit to what I can share with you, and for me it's about finding your own way. You can't be a Christian by proxy. You have to, find a meaning for you. Well, in my first marriage, I discovered I was infertile, and interesting. I'm glad we didn't have children at the time. I wasn't, and that continued. I didn't all of a sudden become fertile. And within our marriage, we talked about, well, what if we could never have children? My husband was satisfied that was okay. It was me, and anyway, so that had a resolution of well, we know that. But I did go on to have some subsequent infertility treatments, which failed, and then we decided that was it. So it was you and I, and that's how it will be. But I still had this yearning for a family. What that looked like, I didn't know. Whether that would be ultimate adoption or I didn't know. But I did decide to go on, try again some infertility treatments. Like I said, that ended. We decided not to. I'm repeating myself here. But I had a lust to go back and find Christ somewhere in a community, and that didn't go away. And I would say that probably was round about the 2 years of being married. And I had some supernatural, what I believe to be supernatural experiences around God being with me in that search. So I had... Now what happened? Oh yeah, I was meant to go on a women's retreat I'd gone back to church. I had a prompting to go back to church, that's right, so I did. It wasn't particularly comfortable, but it wasn't particularly uncomfortable, in an Evangelical Alliance church that was local to us. And I was cautious, but I was invited on this women's retreat, which I was again dubious about attending. But the week leading up to it was really weird. So if I can explain some dreams I had. So over, I think it was 3 or 4 nights, it will come to me as I relay what happened. So I got woken a few nights before leaving for this retreat with a partial dream with no ending, and it was at the same time. I looked at my clock, it was 2 a.m. My husband was asleep to the side of me, and the dream was there was a darkened room, and I could see 2 shadow figures in a room. It wasn't unnerving, it was a comforting dream, but that was the detail I had, and I woke up at 2 a.m. The second night, same room, same figures, and one was illuminated. And it was I think I remember this well, it was a cot and a figure. The cot was illuminated, the figure wasn't. The third night, same time, my husband was still asleep, same room, cot illuminated, and there was a baby in it. Felt comforted and warmth, but I was thinking I'm going mad somewhat, even though I was comforted. And the fourth night, so it was 4 nights, same room, cot illuminated, the baby in it, and it was me. This other figure was me, and I'm getting emotional as I'm recounting it. I couldn't believe it, but I kept it to myself. The dreams I kept to myself until I was illuminated, the night I was illuminated. And I'd been saying to Steve, about, falling back in love with God, if you like. And he was going to take it gently. You can go on this retreat, you don't need my permission, but, please be careful. Because on the fourth night I then said, so I'm going to this retreat and I believe God's going to reveal to me that I'm going to have a baby. And he thought I was completely bonkers, but was cautious and loving around me not being harmed again. And he went down with a bug, a really bad bug. So I said, I won't go. And he said, no, go. But I was torn between taking care of him and going on this retreat, but absolutely convinced that I would go on this retreat and the woman speaker would bring me out and illuminate it and confirm. It's ridiculous, but that was my hope. So I went on the retreat. It was only 2 nights. And we come to the end of the retreat, and disappointingly the speaker hadn't pointed me out and said, the woman in red, I've got a message from you. Honestly, I've put all my eggs in one basket. God, show me you care, show me this is real, show me I'm not mad. And I came really disappointed, bereft. Went up to my room to pack. There was a knock on the door. We were I got a lift to this retreat, and they were waiting downstairs for me. There was a knock on the door as I was zipping up my bag, crying, saying, I'd rang my husband, we're leaving now. I was crying, you were right, I'm bonkers, I'm coming home now. He said, please come home and take care. It'd be all right, but just come home. But this woman who was knocking on the door was the speaker. And she came in and she said, I'm glad I caught you. I noticed I'm getting emotional. It was so profound. And she'd said, I need to tell you something. You're pregnant. Well, I didn't know whether to rip her face off or embrace her, because I thought, if you're lying, please don't harm me. Excuse me.
It's okay. Do you want a tissue?
No, I can't. So she hugged me and she said, I can see you're tender around it. Gave me your contact details and say, I'm not saying it, I'm taking a risk. I'm not saying it to hurt you, I'm taking a risk. But I've walked this path so long that I wouldn't, if I doubted it, I wouldn't come and tell you. So anyway, I went home and I was crying, wanting to believe it more, but this little, oh my goodness, how can it be? I've spent this years infertile. So I went home and I threw out the door and, I had that conversation with you, Steve, but at the 11th hour, this woman, and he just hugged me and said, please don't do this to yourself. Please don't. So he was sceptical around it all. But as it turned out, I was pregnant. Yeah. And she was absolutely right. But I had a bleed with that pregnancy. And I had to go to the doctor, and then you couldn't get these tests like you can now. But I got sent to hospital to have a test immediately, and I was fearful of opening the envelope. But I was, and I went back, and my husband was rejoicing. It was confirmed under a scan. It was just, my body doing what it needs to do, prepare. I wasn't losing it, and it was fine. So he was absolutely in awe of the miracle. So, that spanned a few weeks, but so that influenced his faith. you know, and a sense that confirmed I did